a number of people have expressed concerns about the need for programming skills if they're going to build a panel such as the ones I've featured recently, and so I'm just making this short video to reassure people really. If you build one of the Almost Aviation panels that I'm describing here, whether you build it from a kit of any sort or from scratch, you won't require any programming skills at all. There's absolutely nothing to do. If you can copy a file from one place to another, that's all you need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just demonstrate that from start to finish, and you should see what it's going to take to, we'll just take as an example setting up the default GPS 500 panel in an aircraft and programming the buttons and switches with Linda. So here we go. So the first thing we need to do is we need to run Windows Explorer. I'm not going to show you how to do that. If you've got the My Computer icon on your desktop and double click that, that brings up Explorer. Otherwise you get it from Start, Programs, Accessories. So the file you're going to need is a Linda library file, and you get this for free. I'll give this to you. And let's imagine you've got it from somewhere into your download folder, and it's called lib-almostaviation.lua. So what you want to do is right click on that and select copy. Then we need to go to your FSX installation folder. On my setup it's on the D drive in Flight Simulator X. You need to go to the modules subfolder. That's where Linda installs itself, as does FSUIPC. Then you go to the Linda folder and the libs folder. You'll see in here there's a bunch of files labelled lib, that's lib-something.lua, and then we just simply right click and paste. So we've now copied the Almost Aviation library file into a place where Linda can spot it and use it. Now if this is a plug and play installation, that's the plug part. That's the only technical thing you have to do. You don't have to open up that file and look inside it if you don't want to. Assuming you're going to just use the panel in the way that I've designed it, there's nothing else to do except connect up the buttons and switches to the functions in that file, which we'll do in just a moment in Linda. So we don't need Explorer anymore. What we need is Linda. I've got Linda running over here. Again, I'm not going to take you through this program in detail. There's a very straightforward manual comes with Linda. There's also a, well, what's described as an advanced user guide, but it's really a beginner's guide. Just adds a bit more to the plot, and you can get that from the same place that you get Linda. That's fs-linda.com. So let's create a profile and program up this GPS for an aircraft that, let's say, we haven't got programmed up yet. So if I go new, and we'll make it for one of the Great Lakes biplanes, just why not? We'll make it that one, and we're not going to create it from a template, let's just create it from scratch. So here we go, and if I twiddle the knobs for the GPS, what you're going to see is we've got it programmed. What this star here means is it's inheriting the current programming from the FSX default aircraft, and I've got the default aircraft programmed up on this panel using the RXP, the Reality XP GPS. But don't worry about that. What we're going to do is we're going to overwrite those with what we need. And what we want to do is, let's imagine we're going to install a panel mount GPS 500, which is the standard default FSX and also FS9 GPS. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to go around the panel and program each button in turn. I'm going to start with the direct to push button. You can see, as I said, this is already inheriting from the default aircraft the programming that I've done for that, and we're going to override that. If I click on that, the thing that's going to interest us here is that having copied that library file to where Linda can see it, we've now got a library entry called Almost Aviation in the menu structure, and if I go over to the right, I'll see all the functions that I've made available in that library file, and I can select one of these functions and hook it up to this button. Now this file is currently set up with functions that allow you to program the default GPS 500. It's also got additional functions for the Aerosoft GNS 530 implementation, and also additional functions for the Reality XP. We're not going to cover those latter two today, we're just interested in putting the default GPS 500 in our biplane. So that's the list of functions we can choose from, and the one we're looking for at the moment is the Direct To button, and there it is, G500 Direct To. So we click that and it's programmed. Now all I need to do is when I'm flying that aircraft around and manipulating the GPS, I press the Direct To button and that function gets called. It's red at the moment because we haven't saved it. If I click save, it goes black. And basically it's as simple as that. I'm going to go around the menu, around the panel. I'm going to click menu next. I'm going to do the same thing, go to the Almost Aviation Library, default G500 and G500 menu button, then the clear button, Almost Aviation G500 Library, clear, and in case you haven't got it yet, do one more, the enter button, Almost Aviation default G500, whoops, where did that go, default GPS 500, and enter. And again, if I save, those go from being red to being black, and they're programmed essentially. And it's as simple, it really is as simple as that. Now the only slight wrinkle is the rotary controls, so I'll do that next. Now on the GPS 500 you only have one rotary control and it's at the right hand side, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to turn it to the right. That's currently not programmed to anything, so I'm going to go to Almost Aviation GPS 500, and just because of the way Linda works, you could probably see it clips this menu off at the top of the screen. That's a bit of a rough edge for the algorithm. If I move it down, Almost Aviation default GPS 500. Now we're looking for that menu's still a bit clipped, but we can see what we need to see. Now you're going to see a number of different functions for manipulating the knobs, and the reason these are included, and you see the GPS ones here and also the radio knobs down here. I've included functions to allow you to program the dual concentric rotary controls if you choose to use those instead. This is why we've got outer knob left, outer knob right, inner knob left, inner knob right. But we're not using the dual concentrics, we've got single rotary controls. So we want, the functions we want are single GPS knob right and left. So the function we're programming at the moment, I turned the knob to the right, so we click that one. Again it's in red, means it hasn't been saved. And then if I turn the knob to the left, we just do the same, but we choose Almost Aviation default GPS 500 GPS single GPS knob left. Then if we press the push button to the side of the knob and we go in, we select Almost Aviation default GPS 500 GPS push cursor, and I'll go save. That'll save those three. That's almost what we need, but not quite. Remember that this rotary control relies on the shift function to distinguish between moving between the groups of functions and the pages within the group, and that's all managed transparently inside the library. The only thing we have to do is we have to program up the shift key, which is if I push the rotary control in, we get another button click here. We go to Almost Aviation and you'll see that we have two common functions here called rotary shift on and rotary shift off. So we click rotary shift on for the button down event, and now uniquely in this whole panel setup regime we need to put something on the button up. So when we push the button down it sets rotary shift on. When we release the button we go to Almost Aviation rotary shift off. Save. And that is well and truly it. That panel is now completely programmed and functional within FSX. So if we go to FSX we should be able to demonstrate that. If I go and select that aircraft, which was the Great Lakes T21A, that's the one. Okay, this is the aircraft If I make it a little bit bigger. Now this one had this has got the GPS 500 installed in it, and if I bring that up, whoops, there it is. Okay, now I'm going to turn the rotary control. I'm going to turn it without pushing, so that changes the page. So we're on the default nav screen, which has got the heading up map, and that's the north up map, and there's only 2 pages indicated by this little pair of blobs here. If I push and turn, we get to the current airport page, group, sorry, and if we stay on that group and I turn without pushing, we get all the pages within that current airport. Now this is the default G500, it doesn't have a lot of information in here, but there's, it's WA79. This is an Orbix airport, so this is probably why the information is lacking in the database. But we've got the airport information there. We've got a little diagram of it. No approaches. That's nearest VOR, and so on. So those are all the pages. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 8 pages on in that group. If I push and turn, we get the next group, which is the nearest group. So we've got nearest airports by default. But if I turn the page knob, we get nearest intersection, nearest NDB, VOR, airspace, and that's the last page in that group. Next group, there isn't a next group, so there we go, back to the... So that's the rotary, that's working well. So let's imagine we want to set a direct to course. We want to go to the nearest group, so we push and turn twice. We're at nearest airport. We want the cursor, so we press the cursor push button. Cursor is now active. We push and turn to select airfields. Let's go to Goheen, W52. So we press the direct to button, takes us to the direct to page, enter, enter, and that's set. So if we rotate the group back to the default nav page, we've got that direct to course set. So that's all working. What else? VNav is mapped to the terrain button, so we can turn terrain on or off. Procedures, we're not going to select a procedure. The range buttons, I can zoom out or I can zoom in. What else? We're on, we can do declutter successively. That's decluttered to level 3, then it wraps back around. What else? So looking at the other buttons, one of the buttons that we don't have on our panel is there's a shortcut on the GPS 500 to the nearest function. Now the nearest, as we've seen, it's 2 groups away from the home page, from the default nav page. But on the G500 panel, GPS 500 panel, there is a shortcut button. You can program another button to do that. The function's there, but we don't have a button on our panel, so we're not going to use that. We could actually, what I'm going to come back to in a second is we have got a second rotary control on this panel, which is left, right, push, and a push button beside it. If we're not going to use that rotary for anything else, we could choose to program the push switch on that rotary control or the push button next to it to be the nearest function. But we're going to see a different use for that rotary combination in a moment. But what else? Basically, the other buttons just work the same as I've indicated. Flight plan shows our direct to flight plan. Message, there's no messages to show, and so on. So there we go. We've got a fully functional GPS 500 in our little biplane aircraft, and we didn't have to do any programming. Now, coming back to that unused rotary combination. Although, actually, if I just get that back, although you'll see the GPS 500 only has one rotary control, we can mimic the GNS 530 because we've got the extra rotary control. We could add functionality to this to use that rotary control to control one of the radios, or indeed the way I've set it up, you can control either the COM1 or the nav 1 radio, or both. And if we just go back to Linda, you'll see how to do that. If I turn that the rotary control to the right, and we go to Almost Aviation Library, default GPS 500, you'll notice I've also included these. These things are not strictly speaking GPS 500 functions at all, but we've got, just like we had for the GPS knob, we've got radio, outer knob left right, inner knob left right, single knob left and right. So we're using the single knob, and let's program that up to single knob right, and if I turn it to the left, we'll program single radio knob left. And then if we press the push button beside it, we're going to call the G500 COM nav swap. So what that does is when you push the push button, it flip-flops between controlling the COM1 radio and the nav1 radio. And the next thing we have to do is, again, the center push on the rotary control itself, the down action has to be mapped to rotary shift on, and the up action has to be mapped to rotary shift off. We'll save those, we'll go reload, and what we should find now then, it's going to be difficult because we don't have a nav radio in this aircraft. We have a COM radio. Let's see if that responds. It's defaulted to controlling the COM radio, so if I move the rotary control, yeah, we'll see the COM radio, that's unshifted, so the numbers to the right of the decimal point are changing. If I push and turn, numbers to the left of the decimal point change. So that's COM1. What we can't see is we don't have a nav radio. If I press the push button, that would switch us between COM1 and nav1, but anyway, you just take my word for that. So there you go, that's programming the Almost Aviation GPS from scratch, and as I hope you've seen, it's not programming at all. If you can, as I said earlier, if you can copy a file from one place to the other and you can drive a few menus, then you've got more than enough technical skills to do what's required.